Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I will be talking about Huda's Call Her Daddy interview from Love Island USA season 7. So I just want to start off by saying that if you are a Huda fan, you might not want to watch this video because since Huda has issues holding herself accountable, I am going to hold her accountable in this video, okay? I'm not saying that I'm going to be, going in on her in any like really terrible way, but I have to keep it real. I have to keep it 100 with you guys, okay? Because I like to keep it real on this channel, and there are issues with her behavior, there are issues with the things she said, and it was unfortunate to see that in this interview on Call Her Daddy, she was still in this victim mindset, okay? That we have to talk about. Mind you, I just have to say that I think she's reached 4 million followers now on Instagram. And that's great. I'm glad that, Huda Baby is growing, right? Her content and her channel and everything. But I just think that you liking someone, there's nothing wrong with liking somebody, but I don't understand how some people can just discount some of the behaviors that she like I can't. This girl has got me tongue tied. Like there's some behaviors that she portrays that no matter how much I like you, I have to be looking at you sideways. Like, girl, what are you doing? What are you talking about? Like, it's too much. Okay, so I'm just saying, in the sake of keeping it real, keeping it 100, this might not be the best video for like a Huda fan to watch. So that was, sorry, that was my disclaimer, just so people are aware. Um, okay, so Call Her Daddy, Alex Cooper is the host, right? So she starts by asking Huda, before we even get into Love Island, let's go back to the beginning. Okay. Let me hear your story. How did you grow up? Where are you from? And I think that was a great way to start because knowing where somebody comes from gives you a lot of insight into who they are now and why they make the decisions they make, why they think the way that they do, and all that stuff. So she basically starts out by saying she was from a very big family, one of 5 kids. It sounds like there was some abuse going on in her family, like some DV type stuff. And they grew up, not with a lot of money at all. The mom was like always working. And it seems like her dad was in her life for a period of time. I think that her parents eventually did separate though. And another thing that Hoda mentioned, which I thought was interesting, is that she's the youngest out of the 5, which I was like, very interesting. Um, and I'm only saying that's interesting because when you're the youngest child, there's a lot that you can get away with. You know how they say like the youngest child syndrome, where parents kind of parent the youngest child different than they do like the first and the middle child. So that was interesting to learn. And then she goes into a lot of details about how she was like bullied when she was younger, and that at a certain point, like she felt like she did had to stand up for herself and really defend herself, even though she did want friends, I guess it wasn't easy for her to make friends, and people made fun of her for this reason or the next. Another thing she mentions in Hoda mentions in the interview, which I thought was interesting, was she says that she learned to be very persuasive as being the youngest child. And all I can say is when I heard that, to me, that sounds like she might have learned to be a little bit manipulative, right? Because persuasion and manipulation, I'm not saying they go hand in hand, but I feel like there's sometimes a very thin line, right? Between like being a persuasive person and then possibly that leading to a form of manipulation. And I'm only saying this because we obviously see her some of her behaviors on Love Island, and I think that was an interesting thing to flag, that she's learned how to be persuasive and get her way from a pretty young age, and she's still doing it. So just clock it. Just wanted to say that. Um, so Yes. So she then also talks about her daughter and how she was pretty young when she had her daughter. From what I know, she was not with her partner, like as in they weren't married or anything. They were still dating, and that it wasn't easy for her. He was working and I think helping out here and there, but it sounds like a majority of the mothering and the parental duties fell on her. She said that they struggled to make ends meet. At one point, she was doing Instacart with her daughter, which I know is not easy. She Yeah, and that's also like dangerous basically. So I feel for her on that. I know it's not easy having a child so young and then not necessarily having that full support from your partner. So that is tough, and I commend her for obviously having her daughter, like, raising her and growing up. Another thing she mentions is that her daughter had colic. So I've never heard of this before, but I guess it's like a condition in which your child is crying a lot, and usually, or sometimes it can be for no reason at all. Like they just tend to cry a lot. So that must have been very stressful. I can't even imagine what that was like, especially because I know, like, I'm not a parent myself, but I've heard from parents that like the last thing they ever want to do is like deal with like their child crying and then they don't know what's wrong or they don't know how to console them. So that's tough. Um, Oh, and then sorry, I forgot to mention this because this was very important. But another thing that Huda mentions is she does allude to the fact that she might have been essayed by her father, um, which is very, very, very sad and disturbing to hear. I feel like this happens way too much, and to think that it's a parent is even worse. And I think the craziest thing, she said that her family doesn't believe her, and in my head, I'm like, why wouldn't they believe her? And when she said family, I'm thinking, is she talking about her mom not believing her? Do her sisters not believe her? I wish she had gone into more details about like who doesn't believe her, because I'm like, that's crazy. For someone to make that kind of allegation against a parent, why would they lie, especially as a child? And obviously, I can't sit here and say she's not lying for sure because I don't know. But a lot of times people don't lie about something that's serious. So that also gave me some insight into her relationship with, or not relationship, but like, I guess some wounds that could come from even, you know relationships and dating with men, because if this was her first encounter with a man and he did take advantage of her in that way, I mean, I know that that skews a lot, like that definitely has affected her today. So I do sympathize for her on that. And I know that that's like, those are some of the worst things I think you can do to a child. So I think that that's really, really awful. But I just had to mention that because I think that that's probably also significant as to who she is today and her relationship with men in general. So I had to throw that in there. Um, so Alex asked Huda about Jeremiah and that relationship in Love Island. And I thought that this was pretty interesting because I think that this was a good opportunity for Huda to talk about some of the behaviors that were turning Jeremiah off. Okay. There were some things that we saw her doing in the villa that was just like, for one, when bombshells came in, she would be calling them terrible words like bitch and like these terrible things just for trying to get to know Jeremiah. And at that point, Jeremiah and Huda were not exclusive, right? And sometimes these situations were out of her control. Like when Jeremiah coupled up with Iris, Jeremiah did not pick Iris. Iris did not pick Jeremiah. Like that was, America's choice, right? And then she's still like bad mouthing Iris. And I was like, that was not fair to Iris, right? These are the opportunities that Huda had to take accountability, right? And say, yeah, I shouldn't have name called her that, right? And I think at one point she even says something terrible about Amaya as well. But this was something we saw with Huda, right? Where it's like, even though her and Jeremiah were not exclusive, she was very mean to women that were in any way connected to Jeremiah. And I did not think that this was a good thing at all, because this is the whole point of being on Love Island, right? Why are you on the show if you can't deal with another guy, or sorry, with another woman talking to the guy you're coupled up with? Like, this is basic Love Island procedure. Like, you should never have signed up for reality TV if this is something you cannot handle, right? If you're going to be bad mouthing, name calling these women, why are you on the show? Like, make it make sense? And I think what frustrated me about Huda in this interview was, I'm not saying Jeremiah was perfect, right? And she says that Jeremiah had his faults and that she had her faults. The issue that I have with Huda is she doesn't go into what her faults are, right? She's only talking really about Jeremiah and how he love bombed her, and just some of the things she said to me were just not fair, because I'm like, you can talk about Jeremiah, but why haven't you talked about yourself and where you need some improvements, right? And that's the issue that I have, where she's constantly playing like this victim, you know? Mm-mm. Another thing she mentions is that Jeremiah's behavior changed after they slept together. And what I wanted to say about that was, another thing that I've noticed that Huda does is, instead of actually saying like maybe his behavior changed because her behavior was problematic, right? Some of the things she was saying to him, how she was condescending at times. I know he mentioned that sometimes she would almost speak to him like she was speaking to a child, maybe similar to how she would speak to her daughter, but it's like, I don't want to be spoken to like that, right? Because I'm your partner, right? So I know Jeremiah had issues with Huda's behavior. So instead of Huda mentioning that her behavior was a problem, she alludes to the fact that after they slept together, Jeremiah I can't even speak, distances himself, and that, almost to say that, like, oh, he got what he wanted from me, which was just like, you know, to get busy, and now he's on to the next. But I think that the problem with that is, once again, she's putting the blame elsewhere. She's saying that, oh, all he wanted was me and my body, right? Because there's no way in this world that Jeremiah had issues with your behavior. Instead, he was just after you for your body, and then after it ended, that's a problem, right? Because it's like, how are you seeing the situation? You're never seeing it for what it truly, fully is. She alludes to this again, um, when her and Shelly get into this like fight over how she was dancing on Ace, right? And that she did too much. And her response, or she was talking to one of the other girls in the villa about, what happened, saying that, oh, why is Shelly, like, she didn't get why Shelly was so bothered by it. And Huda says something along the lines of, would it be a problem if I was ugly? And this is the so Huda's doing it again. Instead of saying, you know what, as a girl to girl thing, knowing that like Shelly likes Ace, I did too much. I shouldn't have danced on Ace like that. Instead of just admitting that, right, and saying that maybe I went too far, she's now trying to allude to the fact that Shelly is jealous of her because she's attractive. Guys, no. And this is where like Huda loses me, because I don't like this kind of behavior. Like, once again, she's alluding to something about the physical, right? About the way she looks, and somebody now not treating her the way they should be treating her. What? Because she's attractive? So when come on. Like, be so for real. And I know that this is another cop out, because instead of actually saying, "Hey, I shouldn't have done that." No, let me just say, Shelly's probably jealous of me, and she thinks I'm a threat because I'm so attractive and I could steal her man. Like, come on. And this is where I cannot really say that I'm a fan of Huda. Like, no. No, because there's just too many situations where she just, the way she sees things, like, accountability is always just flying away from her and into some other dimension that I just don't know what's going on. So, yeah, didn't like that at all. Yeah, because she said a comment, if she said, if I was ugly, would it be a problem? Girl, like, come on now. And all these like comments and things she says is just deflecting from the fact that she has behaviors that she could definitely change, and she has things herself that she needs to work on, you know? Yeah, so I mean, there were other things that were mentioned in the interview. I think that I don't want to go into every single detail because the interview was quite long, so I think that it's also worth watching. But I just had to make these comments because I guess I did expect Huda to take a little bit more accountability, but why would I expect that, right? It is what it is. And I think anybody that's like ride or die for her needs to be looked at twice. Only because morally and character wise, I think that there are some things kind of off with her. Um, Another thing that happened during the interview, which I didn't love, was I felt like she was kind of low key lying. When she talked about Chris, which was the guy that she was coupled with after Jeremiah, saying that they never really slept together, but it was confirmed that they did, or at least I thought that she said in the villa that they did. And then I felt like on the Call Her Daddy interview, she was trying to backtrack. I noticed that. And this is where I just feel like I don't think Huda is somebody that I could ever trust. I think that she often skews things to match like her narrative or to make her look better, right? Like sometimes she'll skew the truth or, take accountability and deflect it away from her to make herself look better. Like we've seen this happen time and time and time again. And I felt like she also tries to paint this narrative where like some people could be jealous of her and that's why they treat her the way they do, like Shelley. And we know that that's just not the case. It's just the way she moves and the way she sees things sometimes to me is not right. Like some it's just not right. So I guess I expected more from the interview in terms of her really coming clean and saying, hey, these are some things I could have done better. But we didn't really get that. So I know that she has like a crazy following and people that really love and support her. But this is just my opinion on Huda and her Love Island experience and like who she is as a person. I'm big on morals. I'm big on taking accountability for your actions because that is how you grow as a person. If you can't even say, hey, I have a problem or hey, I could work on this, how do you ever grow? So anybody that can't actually do that to me is a bit scary because I think you end up staying in the same place. Like how can you ever grow when you honestly believe there's nothing wrong with you and you're never wrong and you have nothing to work on? Like it just doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, that's my take on it. Like I just think that at a certain point, like you should be able to say, hey, I hold my hands up. I could have done better or I could change this. So yeah, so that's like my take on it and the interview. I think it's definitely worth watching. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments. Even if you disagree with me, that's okay. Tell me what you think. I like having open dialogue and I like to know people's opinions. If there's some things I've said that you're like, oh, I don't agree with that, let me know. And I'll just leave with this as like a last comment. I've been watching and seeing like why some people really like Huda. And I think one of the things they mentioned was some people felt like growing up they were kind of like what is it like the black sheep, I guess, where they were kind of isolated and maybe bullied. So they felt like they could relate to Huda on that, where in the villa, like maybe because I guess in the villa, like she felt like she was maybe a little more isolated because of certain instances. And then obviously her saying she was bullied when she was younger and I get that, right? Where it's like, okay, you can sympathize with someone that's maybe misunderstood, right? Or but it doesn't change the fact that like she has behaviors that are problematic. And some of her being like isolated in any way, even on the Love Island season, was due to her behavior. Like people don't start to just treat everyone a certain way when everything is great, right? And you always have to pay attention when multiple people are stepping back or saying, hey, I don't know if I want to be associated with this person. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just say, oh, everybody else just is jealous of me and they have issues. So I get if you can relate to like Huda feeling like left out and you're like, hey, I felt like that growing up. But to not talk about some of the behaviors that are problematic about her, to me, you're just ignoring it, acting like it doesn't exist. And that's where like I would never do that because I think that you need to look at that person and say, what is causing these behaviors, right? Like people don't react to someone out of nowhere. So, yeah, so that's the last thing I'll say. Yeah, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your opinions and I have videos that come out every week, so there will be more things to come. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.